Hello, everyone, and welcome to Interviewing the Final Frontier. My name is Caitlin Hennessy. I'm the Program Coordinator for Global Connections. And here at Global Connections, our goal is to provide engaging programs for online students so they can connect to WSU wherever they are. And tonight joining us is Chris Miller. He is a Global Campus Career Counselor, and he is a WSU alumni. And as we're getting started tonight, as everyone's already doing, please use the chat box to submit questions. You can put in your questions at any point. We will do a Q&A at the end of the presentation, though. And if you have any technical difficulties, please let me know, and you can discuss the content. All right, I want to turn it over to Chris. Thanks for coming.
Like Caitlin said, I'm the Global Campus Career Counselor, and I help prospective Global Campus students and current Global Campus students and Global Campus alumni on any career development questions they may have. And we will, I should say this webinar will take about around the 40-minute mark, I would say. And like Caitlin said, I'll take questions at the end. So thank you so much for joining, and let's go ahead and get started. So if you've attended any of my webinars, you will know I always start off with just a snapshot of the career development process. And I think this is a pretty decent look at it, of this circular process we go through many different times in our lives, of what's been called growth and decay. So, you know, originally we find out what we're interested in, we find out what we're good at and what's important to us. And you know, we find some opportunities based on, you know, what might be a good fit or what our education is. And so we're growing and growing and growing into this area, and we grow into some certain career area. And what happens to most people over time is a process of decay. They start to lose interest in the work they've been doing, likely because of time. You know, most people have several different jobs over their lifetime, instead of the old 30, 40, 50-year career. And so this is this idea of this process of growth and decay that we go through constantly throughout our lives. Today we are mostly in the take action and know yourself part. So take action is, you know, connecting with employers, actually interviewing, job searching, and that's something you can't do effectively without knowing yourself, knowing what you're good at, what your experiences are, and knowing how to articulate that with an employer. So that's kind of where we are right now. So some general types of interviews I'm going to talk about briefly: informational interviews, mock interviews, job interviews. And underneath job interviews here, I've listed phone and, you know, web conferencing, Skype, so like computer video interviewing. There are a few others I'll touch on, but basically it's that the job interview section is where we'll get most of this. But just so you know, about informational interviews, I've talked about in different webinars and in different contexts. So for here, this is like the reverse. This is you interviewing someone else. So informational interviews are conversations that you arrange with people who have knowledge and experience in professions you wish to investigate. It's used by experienced professionals to research advancement opportunities in their careers, as well as workers seeking first careers or people who are changing careers. Some of the reasons to do so would be to gain insight and information from personal accounts of the work setting, knowledge and skill requirements, current trends in the field, develop your networking skills, and introduce yourself to people in the profession, help you identify how to prepare yourself to work toward a particular career goal, increase motivation in working toward career goals, and to build confidence and experience in interacting with professionals. So basically, you know, to learn more about a career. It could lead to a job interview, but it's not a backdoor approach to a job interview. It's really to collect information. So mock interviews is, you know, just basically practicing interviews. You could be practicing with yourself in a mirror. It could be practicing with a friend. Sometimes businesses have like a mock interview day where they dedicate their time to the community, and sometimes this will happen at like a chamber of commerce or at a university. And there's also a great tool I'm going to highlight at the very end of this that's called Interviewstream, and that is a tool that allows you to practice interviewing at any time at your convenience. So the job interview, so phone, web conferencing, and a few other types. So telephone interviewing, you know, all the tips we're going to talk about today are relevant to all different styles of interviews. But like telephone and web conferencing have a few little quirks that are unique to those. So, telephone interviewing is becoming increasingly common. It's a good starting step for companies to kind of do a simple elimination. It can have advantages and disadvantages for both the job seeker and the employer. Employers obviously like this because it's cost effective, and in order to give yourself somewhat of an edge, it's important to keep some tips in mind. So expect to be asked when, why, and how questions regarding both your employment and your educational history. That'll help the employer get a quick assessment of the interviewee. Wait until the interviewer has had a chance to set the agenda at the beginning for the interview before you take control. Have a brief description of yourself ready to start after they hand it over to you, usually in that 1 to 2 minute range. That should include your background, experience, and skills that validate your appropriateness for the job, and also something personal about who you are. Make sure the information you tell them does not conflict with your resume. If asked about your background, be upfront and do not express discomfort at questions. Ask for the interviewer's name so that you can send a thank you note afterward. That'll be important for any type of interview. So, they won't obviously be able to see you physically, so body language can't help you and it can't hurt you. So what you say is much more important. So you should strive to present a strong, confident image of yourself. Talk about your experiences, what you've learned from them. Try to use crisp and clear language to present fact-filled sentences. If you can provide data, that's very helpful. At the conclusion of the interview, propose a face-to-face meeting at their convenience. If the interviewer finishes and says that you are not a good match for the job, it's okay to, not show because you're on the phone, but to let them know you're surprised and recount how your skills and background are a good fit, and if you can answer any further questions. And always send a thank you note, as I said. In terms of web conferencing, a Skype interview or something like that, it's important to create a video-friendly environment. So you want to have everything in place before you begin. You want to limit distractions so you can focus, so the focus is on you and not on what's in the background. You want to position your webcam at eye level. I like to have mine a little bit higher than eye level, but that's just me personally. I like to hide my beautiful double chin. Proper lighting is essential, so the background light should be the brightest in the room. A simple desk lamp can be used as your main light source. Turn on any available lights in the room. Close all windows and make sure there's no glare. Don't use your monitor as the lighting source. So be mindful of that background. Position yourself in front of something with neutral colors. Avoid patterns. No wallpaper, no mirrors. Be sure you have a clean and tidy workspace, so that'll convey, professionalism and organization to the employer. Turn off all appliances or devices that can create ambient noise and disrupt the interview. Allow ample time to answer each question. They usually take around 30 minutes to an hour, the video interviews here. Eliminate all possible distractions. Of course, turn off your cell phone. And if you're at home, make sure anyone else in the house knows that you're taking an interview. And also, it's important to remember where the camera is. So most people would do a video interview on a laptop, and it's usually centered at the very top there. So you want to do your best to think about, be cognizant of where that is, and maintain camera eye contact. So I said there are other different kinds of interviews, and I'll talk about them pretty briefly and talk about some simple tips, but we'll get into more tips as we go on later. But there are peer group interviews, panel interviews, one-on-one interviews, screening interviews, second interviews, of course, and luncheon interviews. The screening interview is like the phone interview. It's to determine if you meet the minimum qualifications for the position, often, like I said, conducted via phone or video. The tip here is to emphasize your knowledge, skills and abilities and experiences, and how they fit in with a position. One-on-one interview is still the most common. often conducted in person by the hiring professional. The tip here is very basic: highlight your qualifications and key strengths for the position. I'll have better tips as we go on later. Panel interview, typically conducted in person by a group of 3 or more, and each interviewer will ask questions specific to their area of expertise within the organization. So you want to respond directly to the person asking the question, but also maintain eye contact with the other panel members intermittently. The peer group interview, typically conducted by a group of potential coworkers to assess your fit with other members with whom you may interact with within the organization. So this is a little bit more relaxed. The idea here is to be agreeable, approachable, come off as a team member. The luncheon interview typically is some dining experience with potential non-supervisory coworkers. It's kind of to assess the culture fit there, how well you can handle yourself in a social and semi-professional work situation. And there are professional dining etiquette videos you can find online, but it's simple dining manners. The second interview is, what you're really trying to get to, similar to the first, except usually longer, more involving, more people to assess, the final fit, your overall compatibility with the position and the organization. It's important to remember that no interview is a failure. Throughout your career, it's likely you will not get most jobs for which you interview. For any given job, there might be several hundred applicants, and only a few of those might be called in for an interview, and so only one of those will be getting the job. So just by getting the interview, you're improving your chances for future jobs. More importantly, you're getting experience interviewing. So interviewing takes practice, and it's hard to come by, so preparation is key. You need to learn the most you can about the job, its requirements, and the company and industry for which you're interviewing. Pay particular attention to the organization for which you hope to work. To an interview, this shows initiative, leads to more insightful conversations during the interview, and distinguishes you from other candidates. From your perspective, it helps you learn more about the position in the organization, and this knowledge enables you to make a more informed decision should you actually receive a job offer. Just as important, preparation builds confidence, which lets you relax, ideally, during the interview, at least hopefully eventually, and that translates into success. So the same goes with interviews. Your confidence will show, and you'll give a better presentation of your qualifications. And if that presentation isn't good enough on the first interview, it's still knowledge gain for the next interview, the third interview, and so on, however many it takes. Your familiarity with certain questions and situations will make your responses more polished next time. So, any interview, even if it doesn't lead to a job, is preparation for the next one. And that's invaluable experience. So different types of questions you may experience in an interview. So just the general opening questions, tell me about yourself. Like I said before, this is something you're going to hopefully tailor to some kind of job posting. But if it's not, you're just highlighting, your professional summary that you might have on the top of a resume. Some highlights about your experience or your education, and also something personal. So work-related questions, describe, your ideal work environment. These are some examples of these, of course. What did you enjoy most on your last job? What did you enjoy least? Describe the most difficult work-related situation you've ever faced, and how did you react? What relationship should exist between a supervisor and those reporting to that supervisor? Why did you leave your last job, and would they give you a good recommendation? Are you willing to spend some time as a trainee? Some education questions, for example, what is your most rewarding college experience? Why did you choose the global campus? Why did you select your field of study? Which courses do you like most or least, and why? Do you think your grades are a good indicator of your college achievement? That's always an interesting question for global campus students because they often have a varied timeline and very different college experiences. If you had a chance to repeat your college career, what would you do differently and why? Some activities questions, for example, how do you like to spend your time outside of work? What opportunities did you have for leadership? What goals have you set for yourself outside of work? And on that note, goals questions, where do you hope to be in your career in a year or in 5 years? What are your short-term and long-term goals? When and why did you establish those? What do you hope to accomplish in your lifetime? Some things are along personal qualities. How would you describe yourself? How would a close friend or an employer describe you? Give 3 words that describe you best. What do you think would be your greatest contribution to our organization? Do you enjoy working alone or with other people? Which 2 accomplishments have given you the most satisfaction and why? Some success failure questions. Usually these would be something for a first interview. What are your 3 greatest successes and why? What are your 3 greatest failures and why? What would you do differently to change the failures into successes? Things knowledge of the organization. Why did you seek a job with our organization? What do you know about our organization or the industry? Why should we hire you? If you were hiring a person for this position, what qualities would you look for? And then technical ones, of course, will vary from industry to industry. You may be asked to solve a problem. You may be given a situation and asked how you would respond, and hopefully you would pass the test. During the interview, of course, anxiety is normal for all parties, and I'll talk about the employer's anxieties a little bit later on. But don't worry, try not to worry, obviously. It's so hard not to, about being nervous during the interview. This is normal and will be expected. Just remember the interviewer wants to hire you if you have the right qualifications and interest in the position. Many interviewers will begin the interview with some small talk to help you relax. This often seems irrelevant to the position, but you're still being evaluated. So take the opening moments to show a great attitude and positivity, and hopefully you'll get a sense of the energy level and the pacing. The second phase of the interview consists of the interviewer asking you questions to try to determine your match to the specifications needed to do the work well. The most reliable way for an interviewer to project how you would perform in the future is to examine the past. So the idea here is microcosm reveals macrocosm, and I'll talk about that again later. Some examples of just basic interview questions. Tell me about a time of microcosm revealing macrocosm. Tell me about a time when you had to go beyond what is ordinarily expected out of an employee in order to get the job done. Or give me an example of an important goal you set and describe your success in reaching it. Or describe a time when you had an angry customer and how you dealt with that. By analyzing the questions asked of you, you will be able to find out more particulars about the job for which you have applied. What emphasis does the interviewer seem to be placing on which skills, knowledge, personality traits, and attitudes? That insight can help you focus your answers more easily to the employer's position. Always relate your questions to your future responsibilities and the organization's policies. You want to give concrete examples and anything to help illustrate your qualifications. So more than simple yes or no answers. Your point should be clear to enable the employers to understand what you're trying to say, relevant to enable the employer to determine your strengths for the particular job, and adequate to enable the employer to have sufficient information to make a good decision. So behavioral interview questions are very common in interviews today, and these are, again, to show that microcosm reveals macrocosm. So the little reveals the whole. The past behavior and performance predicts future behavior and performance. So any of that past experience might come from work, activities, hobbies, volunteer work, family life, anything. At an interview, it's important to focus on your experience, behaviors, skills, and abilities, anything that's relevant to the job. So what is the STAR method? The STAR method is basically what you would do in order to answer these behavioral interview questions. So STAR stands for S, situation, T, task, A, action, R, result. So you want to explain the situation you were in, the task for which you were responsible, the specific action you took, and the result of that action. That's a STAR. So just a brief example, describe a recent work-related problem and actions that you took to solve it. This was asked of a college student working for the student newspaper. So the situation, you don't actually say, like, for every time you don't say, well, this is the situation, this is the task, this is the action, this is the result. That just kind of helps you think about it in your mind. So advertising revenue is falling off for the newspaper. And large numbers of long-term advertisers were not renewing contracts. My goal was to increase advertising revenues, obviously. What I did was I designed a new promotional packet to go with a rate sheet and compared the benefits of the circulation with other ad media in the area. Also set up a special training session for the account executives with a professor who discussed competitive selling strategies. What happened was we actually signed contracts with 15 former advertisers for daily ads and 5 for special supplements. We increased our new advertisers by 20% over the same period last year. So another nice thing about that, just that example, is that it's giving you numbers about 15 former advertisers, 5 special supplements, 20% over the same period. Any kind of specific data is very useful, just as it is on a resume. So in preparing for these behavioral-based questions, you want to try to do your best to analyze the type of position for which you're applying. What skills do employers require? Analyze your own background. What skills do you have? Which ones are related to the job? Identify examples from your past experience where you demonstrated those skills and concentrate on these full star answers. When possible, quantify your results, like I said. Be prepared to provide examples of when results didn't turn out as you planned, and what did you do, and what would you do differently. So some more examples for you to think about, some practice behavioral questions. What was the toughest decision you had to make at a previous job? Tell me about the most difficult person you've had to communicate with. Tell me about a group project that you were involved in, and what was your role? Tell me about a time that you had to overcome disappointment. Tell me about a time when you had to resolve a conflict in a group situation. Can you describe a time when you disagreed with a coworker or supervisor, and how did you handle it? So don't view any experience as insignificant. In an interview, it's likely that hearing about one of those seemingly insignificant or minor experiences will satisfy the interviewers more than a recounting of some top achievement. During the stress of an interview, it'll be really hard to recall good examples, which is why you need to practice and prepare. Rehearse how you describe key experiences to interviewers so you can recount them vividly and concisely. If you can create strong visual images to the interviewer's mind, you'll have a better chance of convincing them that you have those desired skills. Okay, and then at the end of the interview, it's going to be your turn to ask questions, and that's a very important part of the interview. It's also important to know questions not to ask. So not only should you know what questions to ask during the interview, but also know what not to ask. You don't want to alienate the employer by putting them on the defensive. So avoid asking any questions that are answered on the company's website. Employers will recognize when you haven't done your homework. If some information isn't clear, you should ask for clarification. Don't bring up salary or benefits in the initial interviewer. The employer may choose to bring up the information, but you should not initiate the topic. Avoid asking any personal questions or questions that will put the employer on the defensive. So any questions about the interviewer's educational background, marital status, past work experience, and so on. Of course, if it's an informational interview, you should ask about their work experience and educational background, but not in a job interview. Don't ask questions that have already been answered during the interview. If you have prepared a list of questions and some have already been addressed during them, do not repeat them unless you need clarification. So what are some of the questions you should ask at the end of an interview? Questions about the organization. So what makes your organization different from others? And you can name a specific other one. That would be helpful. Where does this organization plan to be in 5 years or 10 years? Questions about position and infrastructure. How does this position relate to others in the department? Which departments would I interact with the most? Questions about advancement opportunities. How is the position for which I am applying evaluated, and how often? Questions about job security. How did the opening for which I am applying occur? So how did this come to be posted? Professional development questions. Is training provided for the position for which I'm interviewing? How is it provided? How long is it provided? Does the organization support membership and participation in professional organizations, things like that? So some more about tips for a successful interview. You want to learn as much as you can about the company beforehand. You want to obviously know its products and services, its profit margin, its management, its culture, its dress code, anything else you can think of. You want to do practice interviews, read through sample interview questions online and on Interviewstream, which I'll show you. Think about how your experience in work, classes, and activities can relate to the job you're seeking. Allow plenty of time to get to the interview, and if possible, visit the site in advance and time how long it takes to get there. Plan your interview attire in advance and make sure your clothing is clean and your shoes are clean. Pay attention to personal hygiene. Avoid cologne and perfume. Bring extra copies of your resume and a list of references. Speak clearly and don't be afraid to pause for a moment to collect your thoughts. Be honest. Don't try to cover up mistakes. Instead, focus on what you've learned from them. Be assertive. Remember that the interview is a way for you to learn if the job is right for you. Have several questions prepared to ask at the end. And ask the interviewer for a business card, anyone, all the interviewers that are there if it's a group, and send handwritten thank you notes as soon as possible afterward. And then some more tips I wanted to highlight from the book, What Color is Your Parachute by Richard Bowles. I initially put this from the 2017 version. I just got the 2018 version, and there were no changes here, so it is the same. But some of the things that he talks about are the 50-50 rule. So during the interview, determine that you want to observe the 50-50 rule. So people who get hired are those who make speaking and listening 50-50. So half the time they let the employer do the talking, half the time they do the talking. And so people who don't follow that mix or have been shown to be the ones who are not getting hired. So he had some thoughts about that. He says that he thinks if you are talking too much, you come across as one who would ignore the needs of the organization. If you're talking too little, you might come across as someone who's trying to hide something about their background. Another tip, the 20-second to 2-minute rule. In answering the employer's question, what you want to do is have your answer be between 20 minutes and 2 seconds. So you should not plan to speak any longer than 2 minutes at a time in order to make the best impression. In fact, some answers only take about 20 seconds. Any less than that, it may show, they may have an idea that you have a lack of communication skills. So again, you obviously want to avoid one-word answers. No, you want to elaborate more than a yes or no. Also, risk versus reward. The employer is primarily concerned about risk, and this is what I was mentioning earlier about the other side of the table and the employer's anxieties. So they're anxious that if hired, you won't be able to do the job, that you lack the necessary skills or experience, and it wasn't uncovered in the interview. That if hired, you won't put in a full working day more often than not. That you'll take frequent sick days. You'll only stay around for a few months until you find a better job. That if hired, you may take too long to master the job. You won't get along with other workers there, or you'll develop a personality conflict with a supervisor. That you'll only do the minimum amount to get away with. You'll always have to be told what to do next rather than showing initiative. That you'll be revealed to have some kind of character flaw not seen in the interview, some laziness, dishonest, irresponsible, things like that. Also, it's the small things that are important in an interview. So this, again, is that microcosm reveals macrocosm. What you've done before predicts future success. So again, your appearance and your personal habits, freshly laundered clothes, fresh breath, you're not wafting tons of cologne or perfume, things like that. Some nervous mannerisms. You continually avoid eye contact. You don't have a firm handshake. You slouch in your chair. Other little things, lacking self-confidence, so you're speaking so softly you can't be heard, or so loudly you could be heard from very far away. You're giving answers in an extremely hesitant fashion. You're giving only one-word answers. You're constantly interrupting the employer. You're downplaying your achievements. It's also important to think about the consideration show to others. So any kind of receptionist, or if it's a luncheon interview, the wait staff, how you interact with them. You display extreme criticalness toward the previous employer. You don't thank them on the way out, things like that. Values, so any sign of arrogance, a sign of laziness, blaming, dishonesty, irresponsibility, not following instructions, lack of enthusiasm, any signs of instability. And then also showing evidence, knowing skills and demand. So skills that are relevant to all employers, to all jobs. So all employers are looking for people who are punctual, who are dependable, who have a good attitude, who have drive, energy, enthusiasm, who want more than a paycheck, who are self-disciplined and well-organized, who can handle people well, who use language effectively, can work on computers, who are committed to teamwork, who are flexible, who are trainable, project and goal-oriented, who are creative, have integrity, and able to identify opportunities, markets, and trends. And then, whenever possible, show evidence of any work that you've done. So, it's easy for people who are artists or if a craft person, anyone who produces a product to bring a sample. But for us, it's harder. For some people, it's harder to have a portfolio. You can even bring something in on a flash drive, but really what you should do is have some evidence on your YouTube page. Or not YouTube, I'm sorry, on your LinkedIn page. And LinkedIn gives you that opportunity to show off some artifacts of your work. So for me personally, I have video links to webinars. That's just an example of something I can show an employer. And now we've come to the interview stream portion where I want to show off this nice tool that every WSU student has access to. It gives you the opportunity to practice without pressure at any time with, a computer with internet access, a webcam, laptop, smartphone, tablet, and you can do it anytime, any place. So I'll show you how you get there. And once you get in, you select conduct an interview to start that process. And you can either pick an interview that's been pre-made, or you can customize one yourself, or I can help you put one together too. And then at the end of your session, you'll get an opportunity to review it. You can also review it while you're going along. And then there's a self-evaluation form I'll show you too. And this you can find at ascc.wsu.edu/interviewstream. And I will show you the long way to get there just in case you don't have that full link. So give me a second to pop on over there. Okay, I am at ascc.wsu.edu, the Academic Success and Career Center. On the left-hand menu here, you'll see Career Services. So you'll click on that. And one other thing, actually, I'll show you first in this drop-down menu under Helpful Links. I'll click that. On this right side, you'll see Information Packets, Interviewing Skills. There's a nice interviewing packet there, too, you want to take a look at. It'll help you with practicing, too. And so left-hand menu, Interview Stream. And it kind of just covers what I said about the tool. And it has a self-evaluation form and something to help develop an elevator pitch and interviewing tips. But most of that is available within this tool also. So I'm going to go right here to access Interviewstream. Click on that. And this is my view. What you will see, student view, looks like this. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom first to show you the resources. So there's that self-evaluation form that I will show you after I show you the interviewing. So conduct an interview. Click on that. Created for me or custom. Let's just do the created one first just to show you what it looks like. It'll take a second for things to load up here. And we will just do general interview 2. You can view the questions ahead of time. So here they are on the right side. Tell me about yourself. How did you find success? How do you prioritize your workload, etc.? But I just want to give you an idea of what it looks like, what the experience is like. There's me. Next.
Hi, welcome to WSU's interview stream. Your interview will begin shortly. Please remember to speak clearly and look at your webcam. You will have 2 minutes to answer each interview question. If you are not satisfied with your answer, you may answer the question one more time. Good luck on your interview. Tell me about yourself.
So, simple introduction there, and then you can see my webcam is enabled, so that's why it shows me. And this is where you record your answer to that. And then you click on it when you're done, and you can either review the response or you can retry. So for this one that's set up, you get 2 retries. You can continue on to the next question and so on. This one's kind of long, so I'm actually going to get out of this and show you a shorter one that's not pre-made that we're creating. Custom interview, take the custom interview. And on this left side, you see different categories for questions. So business categories, business consulting client skills, and just to show you, there'll be a drop down of different questions in there. And these are some pre-populated ones from all sorts of different sources. So business questions, I'll keep going down. I apologize for my fast scrolling. Education questions about your major and also about the education industry. So like under education, there's an MBA interview. And there's also an architect. Oh, this is engineering. Okay, so elementary teaching, then engineering, environmental, then the general list. These are the ones that are pretty much relevant to all people with interviews, all industries, that first interview especially. And then after general questions, we'll get down to some other areas and then more industry specific. So IT, law, medicine, sciences. Okay, so special industries. Let's see if any of these would apply to any type of global campus student actuary. I mean, any of them could. Comms new. We have comm now. Let's see if there's anything else. Hospitality. So let's go hospitality. Law enforcement. Law enforcement. I don't think there's them up there. What traits are needed by good law enforcement officers? I'll just pick one. Just quickly. Let's see. What did I say? Hospitality. Where'd you go? There we go. That's one that's okay. Tell me about your cost control ability. So what you do is you click on it and you drag it over to the right. You can put as many in there as you. I don't forget what the limit is for an interview. Obviously, you're not going to want to have too many questions, but just to show you what this is like. Again, I'll enable a webcam.
Hi, and welcome to Interviewstream. Your interview will begin shortly. Please remember to speak clearly, look forward, smile, and relax. Tell me about your cost control abilities. What have you done to help or improve your financial results?
And this is where I answer. I am the best with cost control for these reasons. I'm stating. Click it when I'm done. I will continue to show you what the end is like. And this might take a second. Bear with me while it finishes compiling.
Thank you for completing the Interviewstream practice interview. You will receive an email with a link and tips on how to maintain your Interviewstream account.
And so you have this idea or these options here. So request counselor review, you can do that and have basically request that I review it. You can view it yourself. You can go home or you can log out. No matter what, you're always going to get an email of your interview afterward. And so I'm going to go back home just to show you that self-evaluation form. Click on that. Oh, I have to enable it so it looks normal. And so evaluating nonverbal communication, verbal communication, some other things on a 3-point Likert scale and also non-applicable here. So just excellent, good, needs improvement. Pretty basic stuff. Direct eye contact, appearance, posture, friendly demeanor. Your fillers, like, and I know I say all the time. I can't. I've tried so hard to stop. So hard to do. Use proper grammar, avoiding slang terms, articulating relevant skills and accomplishments, expressing ideas clearly. Other questions to consider. Did you stick to the subject? How well did you focus on your ability to learn quickly? Communication skills, analytical abilities, and other things like that. So just to give you an idea of what this evaluation form looks like. I wanted to provide my contact information. My email address is cmiller66@wsu.edu. It's the best way to get a hold of me. There is also the career support website there. It's on the online.wsu.edu website under current students. And then there's also a link there for the WSU career blog where I share some career information about events and things like that. So I will hand it over to Caitlin here, and I will stick around for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. One question we have is it common for employers to ask about global campus versus on-campus college education? Is there any stigma associated with this? And if so, how would you address it in an interview?
I mean, of course, employer perception is something that's going to vary a lot from person to person. And, some people have preconceived notions about online education. So really the best way to address it is to talk about the education. So know what it is. It is WSU professors teaching online. So it's the same education that the students on campus are receiving. And, from the majority of what I hear, it's not a huge issue. I know it has been an issue for some people, but I would say throughout the majority, it's not. I hope I answered that. Did I miss any part of that?
Chris, and then another question and also clarification is the questions you were going over towards the beginning of your presentation when you were giving examples with different methods and types of questions. Is there a way to get a copy of that list of questions that you were referring to?
Yeah, so that was that interview. Some of those are in that interviewing packet I was highlighting there at the end. So at ascc.wsu.edu, under that career services option on the left-hand menu, if you go to helpful links, you can find that interviewing packet. And I know that is a little bit more updated than maybe the one I was using, but I should have a copy of the old one too if they're not there. And I can send those to you if you send me an email.
And we have one more question for the time, but if anyone else has questions, please write them into the chat now. And also, please do let us know what you think of tonight's program by answering a short survey at connections.wcu.edu/event survey, and I will put that into the chat box momentarily. Our next question asks, how can you anticipate if there will be a panel of interviewers versus just a one-on-one interview? Is there a way to ask when the interview is being scheduled, or is that inappropriate?
No, that's absolutely fine to ask. And in most cases, they will tell you ahead of time, but sometimes you will be surprised with the panel. I know from my experience, at least, as on the interviewing side, it's always been, explained to the interviewee ahead of time that they're going to be a few different people, and usually specifically is told this person from this department will be there, this person from that department. So yeah, it's fine to ask though. It's totally fine.